Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Maria Jaju and today I am painting this. The idea behind this painting is it's actually fan art. I had recently read a fantastic series, actually just 2 books out of the 3, the third one's coming out next year, by Sarah J Maas. And this series is called The Court of Thorns and Roses, and then the second book is called The Court of Mist and Fury. And this is a bit of fan art of the main character, Farah. And this is not actually a scene from the book, but a couple of scenes that I've put together. And I'm not going to talk anymore about that because I don't want to give away what happens in the book. But it is an awesome story, and if you like fantasy and romance, it is well worth a read. Please go pick it up. Prior to starting on this painting, I had done some life drawings from photos, and I had done some thumbnail sketches to plan out where everything is going to be. I am now sketching it out directly on my good paper, which is Strathmore 300-pound Coldpress watercolor paper. I actually prefer hot press, but they don't sell it in this size. The difference between hot and cold press is that hot press is much smoother. Cold press has much more bumps on it. At this size, it starts to matter. At the larger sizes, the cold press makes for some really, really pretty effects. This is probably the most involved painting that I have done in the last couple of months. There's a lot going on here. There are mountains in the background. There is that temple looking thing with a causeway in the not so far background. Then it comes forward towards her. We have her, and then we have some things that are even closer to us. And perspective has never been one of my fortes. You will probably not see a cityscape or especially streetscape from me anytime soon, but having backgrounds that tell stories and having my character be part of a world is very important to me. So I am practicing having these environments in my illustrations, even though it is hard, really, really hard for me. You actually hear me talk about this a lot if you watch some of my other videos. I am constantly noticing what I struggle with and then making sure that I do that really well in my next painting. And here, one of the things that I know that I am pretty terrible at is drawing mountains. So I found some really pretty references, and I did my best to have almost a full-on landscape painting in this far, far background at the top. And I had found that the key, for me at least, in painting mountains has been 2 things. One is variation. I tend to make my mountains be very monotone. All the peaks will stick out to the same height and all of the valleys will be roughly the same width if I am left to my own devices without any references. So variety, having some peaks higher, some peaks wider, some peaks narrower, some valleys go to the left, some to the right, that is really, really important. And then the other thing, and this really saved me once I figured it out, is don't be afraid of contrast. Up on the mountains, it's really, really bright. Like if you ever go hiking and you go above the tree line, it is just really, really bright, even on a cloudy day. So don't be afraid of contrast, and especially in the nooks and crannies in the valleys, it's totally okay to put down the darkest colors you have. Those of you who saw my crow painting, I called it One of the Crows. It's the lady with the red wings on the bridge. Remember me talking about ripples and water and waves. And in this case, I'm actually using the same technique that I had learned in that painting, but this time except for a couple of waves towards the start, I actually know what I'm doing and I can just paint from my head, and it's very liberating. Here you see me start to paint the detail on the mountains. I must have put an hour just into these mountains. I also discovered that I can't paint mirror image. My head gets confused, and there's a couple of places where I had to cover up strokes going the wrong direction. So be careful if you try. But this is what I'm talking about with the contrast and putting in on the darker colors, especially the further that the mountains are from the viewer. And then in the reflection in the water, the trick that I figured out is you make it darker, but you also make it more saturated. And I'm not sure why that happens. Usually I like to know the scientific explanation behind everything. But in this case, I looked at a bunch of references, and this was very commonly true, and I'm not really sure why. But once I put it in that way, and especially after I put in the forest at the foothills, it worked out really well, and I'm really proud of these mountains. It took a lot of layers to get her to look pretty. I was actually worried at one point that I wouldn't be able to, and unfortunately I can paint the best mountains in the world and the prettiest ocean ripples, but if the girl in the middle of the page has one eye that is mismatching the other, or otherwise some glaring painting mistake, because I am painting at such a tiny scale, and any movement of a brush that goes the wrong direction can screw it up horribly. Replace her nose with her mouth, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, if you quote-unquote screw it up, or if I screw it up rather, there is no redeeming this painting. It will not be nearly as interesting to the viewer, and that's just a fact of life. And so I see a lot of other artists in their YouTube videos especially talking about how they're scared of messing up the face, so they might do it first, because then if they mess it up, then the rest of the work can just be scrapped. Or they'll do it last because they are terrified, like me, of screwing it up. And one of the things that I am purposely doing here, and in most of the other paintings that you've seen me do recently as well, is I am daring to try, whether it's her face or honestly any other part of the painting. The worst thing that happens is I learn a ton and I have a painting that I can't really show. That is the worst that happens. I lost maybe 4 or 5 hours of my life. Oh well. But what I stand to gain from the experience, if I dare to try and if I'm successful, is so much. I mean, not even including the fact that I will have this beautiful painting to be proud of. I will have learned a lot. I will have been able to do better things and try more interesting stuff in my next one. There's all the experience that comes from actually putting the brush into the color and putting the brush to the paper. It's just amazing. It's totally worth it. And I want to encourage you that if you're ever afraid that you might screw up your painting or drawing or Copic markers or whatever your favorite medium, just don't. Dare to risk it. It's so worth it. And I am so glad that in this case, even though I was worried about her not turning out pretty, because the line art really didn't look nearly as pretty as I wanted this character to be, and she's supposed to be absolutely gorgeous. Even though I was scared, I still tried and I still went forward, and I still put down thin layers of paint on her face so that I can get these shapes to be the way that I want them to be. And I think it worked out really well. I am really proud of her lips. I am really proud of her cheekbones. And I'm really proud of her eyes and her eyebrows. I think I wound up doing a really good job on these. And I wouldn't have gotten it done if I didn't dare to try. One of the things I did struggle with a lot on her though is her hair. Whenever I go into the ocean, I prefer to keep my hair up and out of the water because it just doesn't feel very good when the bottom of my hair is wet and the top is dry. I'd rather either jump in head first or keep my head out of the water entirely. And with her hairdo, I wanted to have that tucked in feeling that is still full of volume because she's a high fae. She has a lot of hair, and I wanted her to have that amount of volume in her tucked in hairdo, and I think I succeeded pretty well in the end, but I struggled with it as I went along. To figure out how to paint these summoned animals made of water that she is calling up with her magic, I referenced glass figurines, the hand-blown kind, and what I found was that their brightest spot is of course where the light hits them, but also because they're glass and the light passes through, their other brightest spot is the exact opposite side of the same shape. If you don't have that, then it doesn't really look like glass, or in my case, water. But the other thing that I noticed was once I painted them in, there was way too much white in this entire ocean. You couldn't really see these animals that I had spent so much time painting in, and so I had put down a layer of this seafoam green kind of color just to make these animals pop. I left the causeway almost for last, mostly because it would be really hard to paint the mountains if I had painted those trees in first. I needed the mountains, then I could go over with the trees, and then once I have the trees, I can put in the basics of the causeway itself, cast shadows from the trees, start putting in shadows into this white stone temple that I have, etc., etc. As we're coming to the end of this painting, I wanted to thank you so much for sticking around with me and watching me paint. I hope that the things that I have said will be useful to you in your own paintings. If you like my work and want to see more of it, please do subscribe. I've started posting a new painting every week. A week is about how long it takes me to do these in the evening, and then I need about a day to do the video editing. If you like this video, please do hit the thumbs up button. It helps other people find my stuff on YouTube. Both of those things are the best way that you can support me, and if you do them for me, you'll make me really, really happy. Thank you so much for watching me. See you next time.